your attention? To begin the ceremonies this noontime, it's my pleasure to call on the Reverend Z. Earl Vaughn, pastor of the Walnut Street Baptist Church, who will lead us in invocation and prayer. Reverend Vaughn.
O eternal God, you've provided us with an abundance of material possessions. You've given us a great spiritual heritage. You've endowed us with that which many have given of their lives in part and in total. You've given us a beautiful day. Thank you again for the occasion that prompts our assembly. We pray that you might bless all that is said and all that is done this day. Bless, O God, we pray, this newly installed president. Bless all those who are on the program, our state, our nation, every community, every home represented here this day. And especially bless this food to nourish our bodies as we give ourselves unto you, a living sacrifice wholly acceptable unto you, for we know that this is our reasonable service of worship. In the blessed name of Jesus Christ, our Lord and Savior, we pray. Amen.
Ladies and gentlemen, friends all, it's my privilege to welcome you here today to this inaugural luncheon. I want first to introduce the people at the head table. Some of them will introduce twice, but it's such a long distance from here down to the end of the room, perhaps you'll enjoy that. On my right-hand side, at the end of the table, Mr. A.M. Bracken, President of the Board of Trustees, Ball State University. Let me introduce everyone at the head table, and when I've finished, if you'd applaud them all, I think that would help. Mr. Bracken, would you stand? And next to him, President James Miller, Western Michigan University. Next to him, Mrs. Edgar Whitcomb. Next to her, Governor Edgar Whitcomb. Mrs. John Pruis, President John Pruis. At the other end of the table, Reverend Earl Vaughn, Mayor Paul Cooley of the City of Muncie, President Joseph Sutton, Indiana University, President Frederick Hovde, Purdue University, President Landrum Bowling, Earlham College. Now, may I have you. In this audience, there are many special people. The head table wasn't big enough for you all to sit here. There are some to whom I'd like to call special attention because I feel that you'd like to have me do so. I'd like first to call on the immediate family of Dr. and Mrs. Pruis, their sons, and would each of you stand, and when I've called all the Pruises I'm going to, then we can apply. David, Dan, and Dirk, Mr. and Mrs. Tees Pruis, father and mother of our president, Mr. and Mrs. Roger Pruis, brother of President Pruis, Mrs. Samuel Zoll, Mrs. Pruis' mother. Would you recognize the Pruis family? We're pleased to have with us today several members of the General Assembly, particularly those who live in this area, and I'd like to have them stand as a group if they would, please. Elected members of the General Assembly of the State of Indiana. We're happy to have with us today the Secretary of State, Mr. William Salem. Where is Mr. Salem? He left. All right. The Attorney General of the state was represented by his wife and his daughter, Mrs. Theodore Sendak. Is Mrs. Sendak here? Thank you. And we're proud to have in the audience today Congressman David Dennis from the City of Richmond and our district. Congressman Dennis. Mrs. Dennis, won't you stand too, please? Thank you. We're fortunate to have many members of the Ball family who've given their name to this institution, and rather than to call each of them by name, may I ask them to stand as a group, please? Husbands and wives. The university could not operate without its board of trustees. I'd like to have the present members of the Board of Trustees, together with some people who have been members of the Board of Trustees, to stand at this time. You know that we're very pleased and proud with both the quality and the quantity which this assembly represents. It demonstrates that the friends of John Pruis and the friends of Ball State University have gathered from far and wide. If I had to choose just one person who came from far, I think I'd like to call on Dr. Robert Marion Featherstone. Is Dr. Featherstone in the audience? Well, he was here this morning. He earned his bachelor's degree and received an honorary doctorate degree from Ball State University. He's currently chairman of the Department of Pharmacology, the School of Medicine, University of California, San Francisco, California. I think he came from the farthest distance, with perhaps the exception of Mrs. Zoll. There is a long list of people that should be recognized. I can't resist the temptation to recognize just one more, if I may. As representative of the faculty of this institution, perhaps the person with the most senior standing is Dr. O.B. Christie. Dr. Christie, would you and Mrs. Christie stand? I'd like to thank each and every one of you for coming back to Ball State today to help us celebrate this very important occasion in the life of Ball State University. The president, as you've heard, is called to be many things to many people. Possibly the word used to designate his task more than others is that of leadership. Leadership could be described as the ability to motivate or encourage others to do more than they might ordinarily do just left to themselves. And to illustrate what I mean, let me remind you of this little story. Sam Brown was walking home late one Saturday night and decided to take a shortcut through the village cemetery. The light was bad and he fell into an open grave. He jumped and shouted and didn't get any reply, didn't get any help, and finally, exhausted, he gave up, knew that someone would come by in the morning and rescue him, curled up in the corner and fell asleep. Even later, that same Saturday night, another fellow named McDonald walked through the same cemetery and fell into the same grave. He went through the same gyrations, jumping and shouting, to no avail. But all of his energy and activity wakened Sam, who, when he finally came to his senses and realized what was going on, said, "It's no use, Mac, you can't get out of here." But you know he did. Several of our distinguished speakers today here have described the joys and the sorrows of this challenge which John Pruis has accepted. There is an apocryphal tale about a college president who died and did not go to heaven. He was quoted as saying that he didn't really know exactly where he was for some time. The change had been so gradual. I'm sure there have been days like that already, John, particularly during the more violent phases of the renovation of the administration building. But I'm sure there will be many more days like this one, April the 11th, when we gather together with friends to celebrate the advancement of this university under your direction and leadership. And now we're to hear from some of our friends. Ball State University takes great pride in the record of many years of cooperative and friendly relationship with the community of Muncie. In recognition of that tradition of cooperation, we're very proud to have with us today the mayor of the city of Muncie, the Honorable Paul J. Cooley. Mr. Cooley?
Thank you very much, Dr. Burkhardt. You're a tough act to follow. I would like to say at the outset that this is indeed a historic occasion, and I certainly feel greatly honored to have a part in it. I feel sure that the tenure of Dr. Pruis will be long and filled with solid growth of the university. I'm sure that the pursuit of excellence will be the watchword of his administration, coupled with the desire that the educational and growth process be not conducted from the ivory tower, but rather by a healthy, stimulating inquiry. In my short acquaintance with Dr. Pruis, I am impressed by his ability to distinguish the real from just the passing popular idea of the moment, and actions which seem to some of us rather ridiculous and out of keeping with the true educational process. I know that he will try to make this an institution every student and citizen of Muncie and the entire state of Indiana will continue to be proud of. And I hope, Dr. Pruis, that you'll be here when my grandchildren receive their diplomas from this institution. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul.
Thank you very much, Mayor Cooley. The state of Indiana is blessed with many fine colleges and universities, but more than that, she's blessed that in among the several colleges and universities, private and public, there exists a spirit of mutual respect, support, and cooperation. It's truly unique in this or any other nation. To bear witness to this spirit of community which exists among Indiana's colleges and universities, it's our privilege to hear from the President of the Independent Colleges and Universities of Indiana and President of Earlham College, Dr. Landrum Bowling.
Very much. President Pruis, on behalf of your colleagues in the private, independent, and church-related college universities of the state, we want to bid you welcome to the fraternity of college presidents. I must say, though, that your coming fills us, many of us, with a certain sense of apprehension. And I think that apprehension is made more keen as we reflect on the preparations that have gone into your getting ready for this particular job, and the kind of revelation that your selection presents to the whole state and the nation about what the preparation for a college president or university president should be. One of the darkest mysteries about the academic world is has to do with the question of how is a person chosen to be president of an institution. Boards of trustees are notoriously discreet about this. They never say exactly what kind of person they're looking for, and what they do reveal indicates that this man must be such a paragon of all virtues that it's completely impossible to fill it anyway, so that takes us all off the hook somewhat. But I have the unhappy discovery here, which I share with you and I must share with the academic community of the country, that a board of trustees has now come up, obviously, with a formula of what the ideal preparation for a college president should be. I ask you just to reflect upon what is recorded in this program which we had this morning. President Pruis had experience in elementary and high school teaching, early part of his career, so that when he comes into the college campus, he doesn't find it's a completely new thought that the people who come into college have gone through grade school and high school. He is aware of the breed before they get here. He has also had substantial experience as a college administrator. He has been a dean, so he knows what faculty members are like before he takes on this job. And he has been through various kinds of trials and tribulations as an assistant to a president. So here's a man who is certainly forewarned and thus forearmed. But to me, one of the things that perhaps may mark his selection as really a watershed in this business of picking college presidents is the particular discipline that is represented in his teaching career and in his graduate study. He is a product of the study of speech, which is, if you know your ancient classics, one of the most honored and ancient disciplines that there is in education. The ancient Greek philosophers were terribly concerned about rhetoric, about speech. And so Dr. Pruis represents then one of the most revered of all of the academic disciplines. Never having had a speech course myself, and only speculating about what goes into this discipline, and having read some catalogs, I've been thinking about the kinds of courses that must obviously have prepared him for this task. First of all, I'm sure he's had a course or some experience in extemporaneous speeches, in extemporaneous speech making, and he is going to be called upon to make endless extemporaneous speeches to all kinds of audiences, captive and not captive. He has been trained in rhetoric, and he is going to have to put up with an awful lot of rhetoric from a lot of people. He has undoubtedly had some training, some courses in discussion, and boy, with the committee meetings that he's got ahead of him, he's going to be needing all the preparation he can have in discussion. He has undoubtedly had a course in argumentation and debate, and this may be one of the best preparations he will have had. He will have argumentation and debate with students and faculty and perhaps some of the legislators who are here and others. He probably had somewhere along the way some training in dramatic presentation, and this will also stand him in good stead, either when he has to put on the dramatic Freudian slip there. When he has to put on a dramatic presentation or listen to one. He has probably had some training, or at least he's been familiar with training in homiletics and exhortation and preaching, and a certain amount of this he's going to have to do. I hope he will have had some training in speech therapy, because judging by some of the speech that goes on college campuses today, in the absence of the old-fashioned methods of, wash your mouth out with soap, speech therapy may be what's needed. And he's going to need, of course, a special sense of the importance of one of the things that is certainly stressed in any good speech program, and that is the development of a capacity for rationality and civility. Two of the things most needed in the university community and which are particularly needed in these troubled times. How to encourage rationality and civility. And then, of course, as a spokesman for this university and a spokesman from the academic, intellectual community to the state and the nation, he must be someone who is able to be a disseminator, as he demonstrated so brilliantly this morning, a disseminator of the larger vision. It seems to me that the Board of Trustees has picked a man with a kind of practical experience, background, and training that indicates what kind of person we ought to have to be our college presidents. I'm afraid that it's going to make a lot of us look a little bit unprepared by comparison. But it is time, I think, when this particular profession might have more professional standards than it's had in the past. We salute you, President Pruis, and wish you all success as you take on this fine university as your special charge. And we look forward to working with you within the group of Indiana College and University presidents and sharing with you all of the trials, tribulations, burdens, and responsibilities laid upon us all.
Thank you, President Bowling. Among the finest resources of the state of Indiana are its universities, producing as they do educated citizens and productive workers, and not only through the graduates of the universities, but also through the contributions they make through research, through the services rendered daily to farm, factory, industry, commercial enterprise, and a host of others. The senior member of the group of 4 men who head our state-assisted universities in their services to the state and to this nation, Dr. Frederick Hovde, President of Purdue University. President Hovde, may we hear from you?
Mr. Toastmaster and President John and Mrs. Pruis, I bring to you the most sincere and felicitous greetings from the Board of Trustees, of the faculty, and the student body of your sister institution, which I have the honor of heading, Purdue University. But speaking for myself, I welcome you to your hot seat and will enjoy working with you as we already have, since you've been in the hot seat for some few months now. You have lots of friends, and many of them are here today. But I warn you that your friends are the toughest people to satisfy. You have more friends who want now to get into the act and participate in your job than ever before have faced this group of most misunderstood administrators, namely college presidents. And I know whereof I speak. And to the extent that you can somehow or other bring into the decision-making process all the people who want to participate, you have to be indeed the master of all the arts and virtues that man possesses. I said, welcome to the hot seat of the most misunderstood group of administrators in these United States these days. The principal aspect of this degree of misunderstanding resides in the fact that almost none of the groups in our society that are involved understand how little your power really is. And so you will administer and lead under perhaps the most difficult and severe conditions that have ever faced those of us in higher education in America during the past century. I return home in the evenings these past few years, and I have listened to problems and difficulties and people all day long, and then I have the delightful opportunity of listening to my good wife. And she is a very understanding and thoughtful person. She can tell a phony by intuition more quickly than I can by long experience. And then I have to listen to her being a witch at home. And at a recent banquet on my campus, we had some fun. She and the wife of the Dean of Men and the wife of my executive assistant were all made the first initial members of the Order of the Broom. And but despite our problems and so on, the importance and the task to be done by our colleges and universities remains and will remain in the future and from here on out as long as we have our beloved nation. One of the most important works and one of the most important aspects of our total society. And I hope that we in Indiana can avoid the basic tragedy of injuring and destroying something because we are in a period of troubles and difficulties. And I ask you and all those of you who love Ball State University to help her at all times, because what she does here is vitally necessary for the well-being of all our people and our beloved state of Indiana. And I know from my acquaintance with John Pruis, and for 23 years of delightful comradeship and work with his distinguished predecessor, Jack Emmons, that this institution will continue to do for this state and give to this state and its people the highest form of public service, namely high-quality education, based on some of those immutables that are in our society and will be true as long as men are organized into societies. Those immutables have to do with the nature of human development. And no man or woman can develop himself or herself without the necessary personal self-discipline that is involved in learning, that is involved in everything we do as people, living together and working together. And I am sure that this institution and its people, its faculty, and its leadership will carry on the great tradition of this institution since its founding days. So welcome, John, to the work of the universities in our state and the hot seat.
Thank you, Frank.
Thank you very much, President Hovde. It seems to me that there can be no role more rewarding than that of teacher. For one's influence as a teacher is perceptible in the lives of one's students indefinitely. As you heard today, John Pruis went to school at Western Michigan University for many years. We're most fortunate to have with us today his teacher, a man from whom he learned about the administration of higher education, Dr. James W. Miller, president of Western Michigan University. Dr. Miller?
Dr. Burkhardt, John, and Angie, I've been listening to all the advice that you've been getting, and I figure no matter how long you live, you'll never have time to use it all, so I'm not going to give you a great deal of advice. I do want to say that you know as well as I do that when you went into this business, it required that you have a thick hide, a strong stomach, a good sense of humor, and a calm and compassionate spirit. And if you can blend those forces, it isn't bad at all, really. Well, we, your friends and former colleagues, and I note a large number of them here from Kalamazoo, John and Angie, wish you many years of personal satisfaction, good health, and happiness in your service to the youth of Indiana in general and the student body of Ball State University in particular. All of us in Kalamazoo will long remember with fondness and appreciation the good work that you performed as a top-level administrator. I don't know that I ever taught you anything, but you helped me a great deal. And I've been having a lot of trouble since you left, and maybe you'll have to come back from time to time and sort of, straighten me up a bit. And we're all appreciative of what you did as a civic leader, and a very dedicated one, a very effective one in the Kalamazoo community. He mobilized the labor units to get in the community chest in the way in which they should have gotten into it a long time ago, and that's a tough job too, mind you. In these days of considerable uncertainty, unhappiness, and dissatisfaction among people, or among peoples of this nation, no university can escape its responsibility to seek creative solutions designed to improve the mental and spiritual well-being of the society of which we are part. And certainly the dissatisfaction and unhappiness that has afflicted our students, our faculty, our trustees, parents, alumni, citizens, everywhere is readily apparent. The plight of our cities, the seeming insolubility, at least in the minds of many people, of the ghettos and the slums, the concern and the displeasure that so many feel toward foreign and domestic policies, and the high level of self-dissatisfaction are present in varying degrees on all college and university campuses. And as one of our colleagues said recently, we are no longer the beautiful people. You know, the good, the thoughtful, the kind, the generous people. Or George Meredith, I think, put it very succinctly when he said, we are betrayed by what is false inside. Persons who could not conceive of themselves as being prejudiced have found elements of racism and prejudice within themselves. This is a traumatic experience for old as well as for young. And all too many of us seem to have lost that sensitivity, that sense of vision, that enthusiasm, and that inspiration that has traditionally separated man from beast, vegetable from human. And on this occasion, I think it is relevant for me to congratulate the students, the faculty, the supporting staff, the trustees, and the alumni of Ball State University in having placed in you, John, a significant role of leadership in this a trying period in history. But for heaven's sakes, if you think this is a trying period in history, get a hold of Agnes DeMille and have her come and tell you of give you the sort of perspective that she can give you in terms of history when people really were faced with anxiety and peril. I think we exaggerate a great deal of this. Certainly this is not nearly as rough as the Reformation people. When people lost their faith and they stopped to ask directions on the road, they were just as likely to get their throat slit. Or taken a recent period of time when the Vice President of the United States presided over the Senate, with a brace of pistols. I'm sure you don't have that in Indiana, we don't have it in Michigan. But that must have been a trying and anxious period, at least for the Vice President it must have been. Well, knowing you as I do, John, I can with confidence say that Ball State University has as its leader one who can and will think clearly and feel strongly in working for an environment in which all students and all faculty can work arduously to gain knowledge and even more importantly thereafter to utilize it for the benefit of society as well as self. In England, on a London inn, there is a little caption above the doorway that reads, "Fear knocked at the door, but when faith opened it, there was no one there." Well, John and Angie Pruis have faith in their fellow man, and it is not a blind faith, but one which is fresh and consistent with the very special needs of today's students. And I congratulate Ball State on getting John Pruis from us, and we miss him dearly at Western Michigan University.
Thank you, President Miller. The newest of the presidents of Indiana's universities and the leader of the oldest and the largest of our state institutions of higher learning, Indiana University, will make the next presentation. We're pleased to have you here today. Dr. Joseph Sutton, President, Indiana University.
After listening to the university singers, I'm going to take all of my lunches out of town. Although I'm the baby president here, you can see that the lunches have not been too poisonous. My colleague Rich Burkhart mentioned that one of the hallmarks of higher education in the state of Indiana has been the spirit of cooperation among the many institutions of higher education within the state. I assure you that this is not true of a good many states of the United States. I've had the opportunity to go through our first baptism of fire with John Pruis. I say this with the legislators present. They know exactly what baptism I'm talking about. By the way, we were not anointed. Operation will not only continue, but grow. So I bring him greeting from Indiana's oldest and largest state university, from its board of trustees, from its faculty, from its sometimes restive student body, and assure him of our continued cooperation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, President Sutton. Our next speaker could easily be the proudest man in this whole assembly. It's a signal honor to serve as the governor of the state of Indiana. He must, however, be unusually full of pride today to be present as we fix this milestone in the history of Ball State University, surrounded as he is by the presidents of the 4 state universities. We're pleased, sir, that you've accepted our invitation to be with us on this occasion, and we look forward to hearing from you again. The Honorable Edgar D. Whitcomb, Governor of the State of Indiana.
Presidents, distinguished guests, and friends, I am proud and I am honored. And President Hovde talked of a hot seat, President John. I know one when I see one. And I want to say that I know that by now you recognize that you have become a member of one of the most distinguished groups in this whole country. the presidents of our state universities and of our private colleges and universities are, in my opinion, the finest we have in this state. But while you have them, I want you to know that I just have me. And when we differ with the presidents, I may get a volley from the north, from Lafayette, or from the south, from Bloomington, or from the west, from President Rankin. And this has happened. I want to say that I want you all to know that I'm not a stranger to President John, that we have met on many occasions, on several occasions. We have met with the other presidents of the state universities. And I'm here to assure you, President Pruis, that this spirit of cooperation will continue, that we will meet from time to time, that we have tremendous problems ahead of us. We talk of the challenge of the 70s, and I'm here to say that we don't know what we're talking about. I come from Indiana University, and I'm glad to have a big fellow like Joe Sutton with me here. But I came from there when it was a school of 6,000 people, 6,000 students, and it was gigantic at that time, back in the late 30s. And we thought we could foresee the future, but we really couldn't. We had no idea that at this day, in 1969, Purdue University would be one of the leaders in the nation in training people for aerospace and leading astronauts for the world. Or that Indiana and Ball State, I was glad to see the members of the Ball family introduced and some mention made of them, because back in those days, Ball State was the Ball family. We had no vision of it then and of what we would have in the future, and we don't today of what will happen during the 70s. But I'm here to say that only by working together in the best cooperative spirit possible can we possibly meet the challenge of the 70s. I've already indicated through the course of the campaign that I would work together with business and industry to help improve our state. I'm happy to say that some of the big corporations of this town have participated in that program, and on Tuesday we will unveil the greatest program this state has ever had for improving state government, supported by private industry, which contributed $100,000 in cash money, none of it tax dollars, and 60 people for 3 months at an estimated value of $750,000, and we'll come out with a program of recommendations that we will implement that will save our state some $60 to $70 million. We hope those $1 million will be available to further education in this state. We consider it no particular tribute to our state that the percentage of increase for welfare, the percentage of increase for fighting crime in this state during this past session was almost as great as that for providing higher education. So my message is today to tell you that the state administration feels that our success, if we have it, can only be attained by full cooperation. And this is selfish on my part, because if we don't have the help of the universities and business and industry and an involvement of the entire citizenry of this state, we cannot succeed in these problems of meeting our responsibilities in welfare, in crime, in solving the problems of the ghettos, and in solving the problems of the 70s. I'm thrilled to see you join this great fraternity, and you have my congratulations. Thank you.
Thank you, Governor Whitcomb. Since July, many of us have had the good fortune of working closely together with and coming to know and admire John and Angie Pruis. Already it seems as if they'd been with us forever. There may have been times when they wondered how it was going to be following Jack and Aline Emmons, who are responsible for so many of the good things that we now enjoy at Ball State. No one could have made the transition more graciously and more effectively. Now, as we're entering the second 50 years of the life of this university, we're confident that the new leadership which John and Angie provide will raise Ball State University to new heights of service and distinction. The shakedown cruise is over, Captain. The ship is provisioned, the crew have taken stations, tide is rising, and we're ready to sail. Will you come aboard, Mr. Pruis?
Aye, aye, sir. My good friend Jim Miller is saying in the Coast Guard we didn't say it that way. Well, Governor and Mrs. Whitcomb and all of you, the program says at this point, response by John Pruis. I labored a few hours to try to tell you this morning what is most on my mind as I take up where Jack Emmons left off. And at this point, having been honored by so many who have come and whose words of wisdom I shall try always to remember and the advice to follow, I find I'm about run out. To try to enumerate any more of what ought to be or what must be, I think would be putting too many slices into the sandwich. I do want you to know that Angie and I, along with our sons, are most pleased to have come among you and to have been accepted so very warmly by all of you. Even before we moved to this community, there were persons not directly connected with the university who gave us not only offers of help, but help itself. And as soon as we came, it was evident that those initial gestures were serious in intent, in purpose. With respect to my many presidential colleagues from the public and the private institutions of higher education in this state, I gather strength and inspiration. Landrum, you have read the speech curriculum very well. As a matter of fact, you've reminded me of some things that I should have been remembering, so I'll come down, sir, and have you run through that for me once or twice. To Ellen Rankin, my very good friend from the West Side, who was with us this morning, and to President Fred and President Joe, you don't know what it means to me to be accepted. It was noted in the press, and some of our press friends are still here, at the time of the selection, that I was coming from another state. But fortunately, and Leon, I don't know if it was Leon who picked this up or not, they did learn that Angie was born in La Porte, and believe me, that helped a great deal. And I use that every chance I get. I did say once that I had looked at a map and saw that there was a little line that separated Michigan from Indiana, and that for just a little while after arriving, I thought the map should be redrawn and make that line a little wider, because I thought things were just a little different than what I had found in Michigan. But that isn't true. I take it back. People are people, and thank the good Lord for that. And certainly I know that what it takes, wherever you are and whatever your station, It takes dedication to the organization or the institution for which you work. It takes commitment to your goals and purposes. It takes compassion for one another, and again, especially in these days. And it takes recognition of our interdependence. Because the man or the woman today who thinks that he can do it by himself is badly, badly mistaken. As just one bit of evidence of all of this, since it hasn't been recognized yet, permit me please to thank not only all of you for coming and for sharing this day with us, making it such a happy one. There's a group of people who worked long and hard to try to take care of the many details, and I'm sure that you can imagine there were several, of this day. In typical fashion, we appointed a committee. In also somewhat typical fashion, the President appointed the chairman, and that was his administrative assistant, Dr. Richard Caldemeyer. And Dick and his committee have put in hours and hours, and to each of them I say thank you, but not only to them who served on the committee, but Mrs. Senecal, his secretary, who is with us today, and my secretary, Miss Young, and to those 7 or 8 or 10 or whatever it was, students who came in and tried to assist in the many details, a great big hearty thank you. And then for people like Rich Burkhart here, for J.C. Wagner, our Vice President for Business Affairs and Treasurer, who hasn't been up on the platform but has been busy, Vice President Oliver Bum, Vice President Jack Byrell. These are the people who have been closest, of course, during this period. But to all of the members of the staff, the deans, the department heads, the faculty, the students have been very much in evidence. It symbolizes for me, very specifically, that Ball State University indeed is just that, a university. We are one. We do have common goals and purposes. And what you have done for Angie and for me today is you've given us renewed inspiration to try to do the job that you expect of us. We're most grateful, and we look forward to your continued support and help. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, President Pruis, for that fine response. I'd like to add my word of thanks to all of you who've taken time from a very busy season to come with us and share this day of great joy for Ball State University. Meeting's adjourned.